Now we're going to remove the plate. This is the throat plate here. This is where the feed dogs go at the bottom here. Now, in order to do straight stitch on this machine, in other words, not free motion quilting, you need to remove this special plate. You can see it is higher here than the feed dogs. So the feed dogs, when you turn, I'm going to raise this. I should have shown you that before I raised it up, but when you turn the wheel, the hand wheel, and you put your finger over the feed dogs, they never go above the surface of this plate. And that's the whole point. You don't want the feed dogs to operate and stop your machine from feeding manually. You want to be able to manually feed your fabric through when you're doing free motion quilting. Now this one is always a bit of a pain because this little lever here is your needle threading device, which I never use, and it's sometimes in the way. So be very careful that you've placed your screwdriver well into the slot before you try and turn it. Otherwise it might slip and damage that screw. And it may not sound like a big deal, but any little burrs on this screw will catch your fabric when you're sewing, especially with the free motion quilting. So like this one seems to have had that happen to it in the past. I'll get a very, very fine emery paper, sandpaper, and I will file that down gently so that I don't have any burrs left on it. So once I've loosened it a little, I can now loosen it further by hand if I want to, which is what I like to do. So I've taken out one screw. Make sure you've got somewhere safe to keep that, please. If you've got a little magnetic dish next to you, that's fine, or a bowl, anything that you can keep any parts that come off the machine, because you know what, how many times has it happened that the table's been bumped by a child, a dog, a cat, whatever, and they always want to be involved, don't they, in whatever you're doing, and you've lost a screw on the floor. And that may not be a problem for some people. However, if you've got a long shaggy carpet, that's a real pain. And the other thing is that if you have floorboards like mine with big holes and gaps in between the floorboards, this is a very old 400-year-old house, then you are going to lose it down the floorboards, and you may never get it back unless you raise the floorboards up. So don't do that. Let's keep these safe. What I'm doing at the moment quickly is I'm just taking the foot back off because I want to be able to let you see what's going on. So I've taken that off and I've put it to one side. And I'm also, while I'm here, going to remove the needle. So the needle is coming out. I'll show you how to do that in a minute. Okay, let's take that thread out as well. Now what you've got is a plate here. 2 screws have come out of. You've put them somewhere safely, and you simply lift this plate. You can see now how thick it is compared to the other one. And I will bring the other one over in contrast and lay them on top of each other, and you'll be able to see that this one is much fatter, thicker than the other one. So we remove the free motion quilting plate and we replace it with the original one. And it's got a bit of a bounce in it because there are some springs here from this door. So if you had to remove this door, then you wouldn't have that bounce. It would just sit flat. But just so you're aware, if you're doing it with that on, now you put the 2 screws back in, hand tighten it first. The only reason I hand tighten it on this side of the machine is because, believe me, it is such a pain using these screwdrivers in these little confined spaces that it's easier to hand tighten as much as possible. Okay, so keep your screwdriver nice and straight. Make sure it's well seated. Don't over tighten. When you're doing screws opposite each other, you do them each a little at a time. So obviously, as soon as you can feel any tension on it, that's when you stop. Go back to the other screw, tighten that one a little, and then go back to the first one. So that one's starting to tighten. I know it's now at the bottom. I'm going to come back here, tighten it just a little. This does vibrate, but there's very little chance this is going to come out if you don't tighten it too much. So what I'm saying is, don't over tighten it, because it's a pain to get them out later on. So those are now both securely down, and you can see my feed dogs are now raised. So when I put my finger on that and I turn my hand wheel, they've now dropped below this plate, this throat, and now they're rising above again. So that is how you attach the standard straight stitch machine.